Welcome to Ripple Effect Connection. I'm your host, Christy Hugic. This podcast is all about bridging the gap between powerful messages and inspiring messengers. Our mission is simple: to spark transformative conversations that create a ripple effect of positive change in your life and the lives of those around you. Parenting is hard. Parenting a child with special needs is an entirely different kind of hard, one that comes with incredible challenges, resilience, and an unwavering love. In this episode, I'm honored to sit down with two extraordinary moms who happen to be my close friends to shine a light on their journeys. We'll be talking to Jupiter, Florida resident Stephanie Cahill, who is the mother of Ben and Rose. Ben has a rare genetic disorder called Cohen Syndrome and also autism. Stephanie is a certified oncology nurse at Jupiter Medical, loves to cook, go to the beach, and play and watch tennis. We have lots of those conversations. Ben goes to school at the L Center for Excellence, and she loves to attend the book club there. Her and I met during our time with Whole30 as emeritus coaches. Sarah Oberholzer lives in Lancaster, Pennsylvania with her husband and their 3 boys. Their oldest son, Liam, has autism and a speech disorder. They are diehard Philly sports fans. Sarah loves to cook. She makes some great recipes. She's also an amazing book reader. Wait until you hear how she gets that in. We met during our time with Beauty Counter. I'll talk with Sarah and Stephanie about the real, raw realities of raising special needs children, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. This episode isn't just for sharing their stories. It's for every mom out there walking a similar path, feeling overwhelmed, isolated, or unseen. I'm here to create community and to remind you that you are not alone. Whether you're looking for support or a sense of understanding, this conversation is a space for all special needs moms to find connection and strength. Here is my conversation with Sarah and Stephanie, who got to meet each other and connect for the very first time on this podcast. All right, what an honor it is to have two of my favorite people on at the same time today, and two people who I really believe deserve a voice on this podcast to talk about special needs moms. So Sarah, I'm going to start with you. Let's talk about your beautiful family first. Liam, he's your oldest. Can you talk about the diagnosis you ended up getting with him and the challenges that he faces?
Yes. So Liam is our oldest. He is currently 10 years old. He's in 5th grade. We just started school for the first time yesterday. So feeling like all the beginning of school, anxious feelings right now, but this is good distraction. So Liam was diagnosed officially when he was 3 with a speech disorder called apraxia. It's called childhood apraxia of speech. And then he was also diagnosed with autism when he was almost 4, and he also has diagnosed anxiety as well. So there's a lot that went into that. It's like all different time frames, timelines. We got the apraxia diagnosis first, and then we got the autism diagnosis later on. And we started with therapies at birth to 3 in our state. We're in Pennsylvania, so I know it's like statewide what they have for programs, but we did a birth through 3 program, got him started on speech when he was like 15 months old, and have just continued on in that journey of getting services and getting diagnoses when we need them.
Yeah, and I know you and I talked about this before we came on here, and you know, there has to be a fear when you know something's wrong and you just don't know what, and that can be very traumatic. So how did you deal with the unknown, and was there a level of comfort once you knew this is what's going on and then you could deal with it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely very scary. I would say I always had a feeling that would have this diagnosis or some diagnosis later on in life. I think trusting your gut, like I feel like we talk about mom gut all the time, and I feel like it's so like that's what I just felt. And so it is very scary to get that diagnosis, but at the same time it was very reassuring because it was like someone else was seeing all the things we were seeing. And it feels weird to say it's comforting but also scary at the same time, but that's exactly what I felt.
Yeah. And I know, I mean, I can relate in the just,
Hmm.
when I was getting diagnosed with my autoimmune condition, there was the worst part is the unknown
Yeah.
sometimes. And then it's, yes, there is a grieving process when you know, but then it's like, okay, well, we know. And now we know there's things we can do. Stephanie, I'm going to go to you and have you talk about your family and my guy, Ben, and his circumstances and what happened with his diagnosis.
Yes, your guy Ben, he, interestingly, Sarah, to your point about intuition, I had a healthy pregnancy, and however, I was measuring small for gestational age, and my doctor kind of poo-pooed it and said, you're athletic, you're tall, you're carrying well. We will keep an eye on growth scans and make sure he's growing appropriately. He was born 5 days late, and in hindsight, the other thing I was experiencing was low fetal activity. So his kick count, all of that, he was just kind of a lazy baby. And I wish, although I don't know that anything differently would have been done, we were monitored throughout. I was labeled as high risk, and he had a team at his bedside, when he was born. We had one magic golden hour where Ben was with me and my husband, and it was just us three, and it was like the whole world had stopped, and we had this beautiful baby boy. And then he got very sick very quickly and had significant pulmonary hypertension, heart defects, low muscle tone, and went up to the NICU. He was cold, he was hypoglycemic. And so the trauma of that NICU experience, we knew we were leaving with, okay, your child has low muscle tone or hypotonia. And he basically had the $1 million workup when he was in the NICU to figure out why he sort of had all these different symptoms. And then, he had a genetic panel that was negative. Although throughout that first year of life, all of his milestones were delayed. And so we readjusted our sails, and instead of the milestones of sitting, crawling, standing, we celebrated the inch stone of just his head control, propping up on his little hands and elbows to do a little baby push-up. And so there was just a lot of ups and downs and a lot of unknowns. And Christy, what you just said was really impactful about, once you have something, it's something to anchor you to, right? Hold on to. And then at age 14 months, he was diagnosed with global developmental delays. So he was delayed in all of the areas of development and also diagnosed with autism. And that was really relieving. Sarah, like you said, someone else was seeing what we were seeing and feeling as parents. And then interestingly, at age 4, thanks to a little bit more probing from our team up at Boston Children's, we went for whole exome sequencing, which is a genetic test where mom, dad, and baby have all of their genes sequenced. She told me it's like a needle in a haystack. You'll be lucky if you get a call back, but let's try for it. Let's put in for insurance. We got denied at first. We tried again. Okay, so we got the test. In the meantime, I'm 35. Ben's 4.5. I'm like, you know what, Matt, to my husband, this ship is sailing, so it's either now or now or never for having a second child. And we were cool with having one. I mean, we said one is fun. Ben's a super cool guy. We'll have a great, blessed life. But my intuition was like wanting a sibling for him. And so we got pregnant organically. And then I was 8 or 9 weeks pregnant. So, just coming out of the phase, we had just shared with our immediate family only at this time. And we get a call from the geneticist who said, I need you to come in right away. We have a diagnosis for Ben. You're pregnant. I need you to come in. And I went by myself. And in hindsight, I can't believe I did that. But and I'm a nurse. And so I show up in my scrubs at Children's, and she's like, so we found something that explains why Ben is Ben. He has Cohen syndrome. And these are the attributes. And she had a hand paper where she had all the areas of development and all of the specialists that Ben had. They called him, he has a constellation of symptoms. And at the top is the umbrella is Cohen syndrome. But what I loved is that she led with, they have a friendly disposition. And she led with, this positive attribute of Ben, where if you know him, and Christy, you've only, just through picture and video, you've connected with Ben. You love him, and he brings joy to many people that he meets. And so she led with that. And then she said, it includes global developmental delays, autistic traits, low muscle tone, chronic neutropenia. That explained why Ben had multiple infections and still continues to have multiple infections. So we got, the whole list of, and so then that connected us to a smaller, first I was very loud and proud to be an autism mom, and I still am. And that connected me with other autistic families. And now we have an even smaller subset group of the Cohen syndrome. And that has been very validating, helpful, in helping me process the grief that comes along. And I will say one of the most helpful things we got was when Ben was diagnosed with autism and someone passed along the reading Welcome to Holland. Are you ladies familiar with it?
Mm-mm. No.
Okay. So imagine you're on a trip to Europe. You're going to Italy. You have your guidebooks. You have your whole itinerary planned. You're so excited to go to Italy. What happens? Your plane lands in Holland. And it's different. It was not what you planned. You're in unfamiliar territory, a foreign language. You don't have your guidebooks. But it's also beautiful. There's tulips in Holland. There's sunshine. And so I get the chills thinking about that analogy. Just you are family planning and you think your son is going to, I'm just speaking for my husband here, play sports, follow in some of the footsteps, just the typical boy things, right? And our experience has been anything but typical with Ben. But Holland is beautiful too. And it was just it was an incredible detour. So that poem, and I will share that so you can put it in the podcast notes, I found was a very helpful reframe. But you have to remember, you still have to grieve the loss of not going to Italy. You prepared and now your life is markedly different. And we still forever will be grieving parts of our parenting experience. And another piece of advice that someone told me was that it takes ongoing radical acceptance. And that also helped me to just accept the here and now. And that's really all we can do in life with ourselves, our family, our health, our children. And that's helped me reframe. But, the cobwebs and the trauma and the roller coaster ride of this journey can take you to all sorts of places. And I think it will take ongoing work, I think, for both me and my husband and our family. And I don't mean that to sound in a bad way. I just mean it is what it is, right? And we adjust our sails in life. And that's what we've been doing for 10 years with Benjamin.
Yeah, and I mean, Sarah, I know, I'm going off script, I know, but that was, beautifully put, Stephanie. And I know, Sarah, you've got things there that you can relate to. Do you want to talk about that what you can relate to with what Stephanie's saying?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect picture of what it's like. You have this idea like when you're pregnant and of like all these things you're going to do, and who your kid's going to be before you even meet them. And then you're dealt a completely different picture than what you were anticipating. And it's funny you mentioned going to the appointment by yourself. I went to Liam's appointment by myself when he was diagnosed with autism because it was just supposed to be like a, follow-up appointment. And I brought in all these concerns I had, and they decided to diagnose him then and there. And it was just like I was just talking about this recently with someone, and like that day, like I remember it so clearly because it was like the day he was diagnosed. Like it changed our life basically, but at the same time, nothing changed. It was still like the same kid who, I walked in the elevator with Liam, I walked out with Liam. It's not any different. It's just you have this like diagnosis now, and you're like, oh, this changes everything, and it changes nothing. And I think myself, it's easy as a mom to be like, okay, now this is our plan. This is what we're going to do. I have all these things to do. I have a list. Like that helped me. And it does take some time, I think, to get that acceptance of like, this is what our life looks like now. This is completely different than what I thought it was going to be. And I think it takes time for everyone else to kind of catch up to, what that looks like.
Yeah. And I know, Stephanie, I want to circle back too, because I know one thing that was important to you to talk about was advocating for the exome testing. So if you want to talk a little bit more about that, what you mentioned, then feel free. Would love to give you the forum to advocate for that here.
Yeah, I think as Ben's geneticist said, she said, we're just at the tip of the iceberg here. And so there are many more kids that have Cohen Syndrome that are undiagnosed because they don't have access to a geneticist or this type of blood work or healthcare in general, right? So we're very fortunate in that sense that our doctor went to bat for us. It is a autorecessive genetic syndrome. So my husband and I are both carriers, and it takes 2 carriers to express the gene. So therefore, the Puget square of, blue eyes, there is a 1 in 4 chance with every pregnancy, if Matt and I were to have another, that we would have a child that expressed Cohen syndrome, which was a concern because I was pregnant at the time that we found out. And we leaned on faith. We opted, we had all the choices, CVS, amniocentesis. She said, whatever you choose, you'd qualify for IVF with genetics and all of that, right? It can get really sciencey. And part of me as a nurse did want to know. And our parents were making sure that we were prepared to possibly have another child with significant lifelong needs. But Matt said it best. He said to me, I would never end a pregnancy because of another kid like Ben. And that's all I needed to hear. And so we opted not to find out genetics, surprise gender, and we had a healthy baby girl. Something else that, Sarah, I love what you said about, Liam was the same kid who walked on the elevator and, changed everything, but also changed nothing. And I remember at the elevator after Ben was diagnosed with autism and global delays, I said to Matt, like, you okay? And he said, if Ben's happy, I'm happy. If Ben's okay, I'm okay. And again, that really put it into perspective in a simple way. And I think that's also helped to guide us. But absolutely ask your doctor, can you do a genetic panel? Is there something else we can think about here? Would we qualify for whole exome sequencing? Because you do have to go through the hoops to get access to that. But it turned out to be incredibly helpful for us.
Yeah. I think too, one of the things that you both have each day, just like any parent, is going through, there are challenges, but you get to see wins too. Stephanie, do you want to outline just a couple of things that I know the challenges, like the infections that you said. We talk about when Ben's sick, Ben will get sick, a little more often in that. So I know you have some challenges with that. So why don't you first give us a couple of challenges and wins you get to see, and then Sarah, I'm going to have you do the same.
Challenges, it depends day to day. I'd say the hardest ones to deal with on a daily basis are sleep disruption or sleep disturbances, which is very common in kids who are intellectually disabled. And that affects the whole family unit. If mom, dad, child, and sibling are playing a game of musical beds every night, it gets very taxing on the whole family. So I would say sleeping, also behaviors. Benjamin has self-injurious behaviors because of his frustration he experiences when he can't communicate. And so that can be really difficult to see if he's hitting himself, especially in public, things like that. That being said, some of the wins are lately is his communication. He uses a speech device and he has become so fluent. And I'm so proud of him because he really advocates for himself and asking for what he needs. And he needs his banana pancakes, Sesame Street. He needs to go for a car ride. He needs a hug. And I feel like for the first time, Ben and I are like, we're really conversational. And that is really cool to me. And he communicates all the time, both on his iPad, and then he has like the best nonverbal communication and body language. So that's been really cool for the whole family. Even my dog and his little sister Rose, like everyone knows how to communicate with Ben because he lets you know how he's feeling.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I would say challenges right now, we're in a spot where he's becoming, the older he gets, the more obvious it becomes that there's like a little bit of difference between him and classmates or friends or at school, whatever. And I think socially right now, that is the biggest piece because it's such a, for me, it's like, okay, we can do speech, we can do OT, we can do PT, all these things that can help you. And there's not a lot, there are some things, but there's just not a lot to address social cues and like teaching him all these things that are just like, I take for granted every day that are just like, I have to teach him how to, say hello to someone or just modeling all that stuff. It's just with friends, like this is the age where we're like, this is hard. This is like, social stuff is hard to deal with. But on the other side of that is just how much he's grown, like looking back, 5 years ago, he was, very unintelligible. And it's just crazy that we've gotten to a spot where like, he can read like all these things that we didn't think, might ever happen or just would take so long that he's there. So, yeah, it's cool to see.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know, look, any process of parenting, we're going to go through challenges and wins, but, the level and the uniqueness of what you all deal with, can't really be understated. And so that's why I think it's important to hear your voice. And I think it's important for other special needs moms to hear your voices. And so I guess if someone else is listening to this and they're going through this, I guess what advice would you directly give to them? Stephanie, if you want to talk about the advice you would give someone else going through this, and then Sarah, I will circle back to you.
I would say leaning on self-compassion, and I'm saying this as much as to myself as I am to other parents in a similar boat, is give yourself grace. This is really difficult. Support yourself with people that champion you, and it may not be your spouse. They can't hold it all for us, and so developing rich friendships, siblings, people that you can be honest and real with. I think that is the most helpful thing for me, is when I talk to Matt or a friend and I can just explicitly say how I feel about it, and that other person is not trying to fix it or offer a million suggestions, but they're just bearing witness and validating or acknowledging. I think that's the most helpful for me anyway. So self-compassion and a good support system, however that might look like.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo all the same things. I think for me, the most helpful thing is talking to like-minded people that are just in that same circle where they understand kind of what you're going through. And I think that was the most helpful for me in the beginning, of just talking to people who either are further down the road than we were, or just the same spot, or just something of like, just, having that like light at the end of the tunnel, just to help you, I don't know, understand what it's like.
Chef's kiss. I think having friends of all ages is really valuable. And I have found that connecting with older parents and now on the flip side, helping to support people that are just newly diagnosed, or maybe it's not, autism, but it's just my kid needs OT and speech or whatnot. But I think we all learn so much from each other. And some of my best supports are my friends that don't even have children, like my proud childless cat lady friend in Denver. We talk all the time, and she's an incredible sounding board for me and my experience with Ben. So it's really developing those rich relationships in life. Yeah.
Sarah, I want to circle back to you too, because you and I talked about this the other day, and I thought you had some really good information. You both mentioned, having friends. And I think sometimes on the other side of things, being the friend or the family member who isn't quite sure exactly how to support you the best. I felt that, when my godson, was a special needs, kid, and my best friend's the mom, and I see what's going on, but like, what are the ways that I can best support her? So I guess, Sarah, maybe some guidance for some people that need to be that supportive person in your life. What advice would you give them on how to deal with that?
Yeah, I think for me, at least, it's very, it means a lot, and it's very helpful when someone kind of like does their own research on autism or apraxia, or just even asking me questions about Liam specifically, or, just kind of doing it without me like encouraging it or telling them what to do. And that has been, I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just doing stuff without me asking for help too. And just being there to support, but also like a Starbucks gift card in my email, like, is amazing. Like, just little stuff like that, like, I'm always like, I need coffee all the time, but like, just, I think just being there, being supportive, doing your own research, and showing up. Yeah.
Stephanie, you have more to say about that?
I love the practicality of a Starbucks card and a sweet note. It really goes a long way. I love I was just reminded of a time when, a little bit different, but my dad had just passed away, and my friends from work paid for my house to be cleaned in the wake of my dad passing away, and we welcomed Rose, and that was so incredibly helpful. I think anything that can help create ease, and Christy, you are so helpful to talk to when it comes to this, is whatever can create ease. And I like what you said, Sarah, about maybe doing a little bit of your own homework so that we don't feel like we constantly have to explain, or just asking like, what would be the best way to get together with Ben? Or would it be helpful for us to come to your house, or do you want to meet at the park? Those types of situations still stress me out to this day. But if someone had the consideration to ask what might work best for us and Ben, and that means so much. It really does. But yeah, I love the practical stuff, because it can be really hard to fill up our own cup. You're so bogged down with overwhelm.
Yeah. But now you're getting to the next question, because that's the thing, right? You have to find a way to put the oxygen mask on and do your own self-care in this. And I know it's hard for any parent to do that, okay? But it's really hard in this situation. So Stephanie, what are you and I've talked about this a lot off mic, what are you doing to make sure your self-care is a priority?
It definitely ebbs and flows based on my capacity and my mental health in that given season. Christy and I first met through the Whole30 community, and that was a way for me to learn more about how food affects me. And my husband and I did it together. We had so much fun. We learned how to cook together, make delicious meals, nourish ourselves, have more energy. And that became a real cornerstone for other things. Lately, my self-care is tapping into the things that I loved to do before I had kids, which was play tennis, watch tennis, play piano. And so now I am taking piano lessons and I'm playing tennis 1 hour a week. And something small and silly, but I just last night after I brushed my teeth and washed up, I sprayed a little spritz of perfume before I went to bed, just for me, not for anyone else, but just for me to go to bed and have that, oh, that smells good, feels good. And, so, and then like recently I just got an Aura ring because I'm trying to learn how to really listen to my body more, rest when needed, recover. I tend to push through and I can be very resilient and very independent, almost to a fault. But as I'm entering a new decade and, the second half of my life, I really need to listen to my body and honor it and all that it's been through.
Sarah?
Yeah, I think finding those things that are, things that bring you joy, like the tennis and piano, like I love that. I got into reading a couple years ago, and that's been huge. I read in high school because I had to, and I don't think I picked up a book really since. And now I read 80 books last year, and I'm hoping to read 90 this year. And like, it's crazy. Like, it's just reading, but it brings me so much joy, and I love thinking about what I'm going to read next. It's like so nerdy, but I also am a huge, huge, huge fan, and will shout it on the rooftops forever, of therapy. And that's been very beneficial for me. Like, I didn't think I would come into therapy talking about Liam, and I think that's probably all I talk about some days. And that has been very, very helpful. And like Stephanie had mentioned it before, but like dealing with the trauma kind of the diagnosis or just your child, the whole thing. I think just having someone to talk through that with, and hope and all the things. So read and therapy. Those are my things.
Yeah, and I hope someone will listen to this and, take something from it. And then I think that we need to give people the opportunity that you two have been so gracious to give, which is that people can connect with you if they want to share their experiences, because I know that it does help. It's probably more helpful for the two of you to be on here together than it is to have me here, but I'm just here facilitating it because I want you, it's a beautiful thing to watch you two connect and talk about this and share experiences. So if people want to connect with you, Stephanie, can you give them ways that they can connect with you?
Yes, I am pulling up my Instagram handle. I can't remember. Stephanie K Hell _ or Facebook, but some of the best connections I have made have been online through good old Facebook or Instagram. So I have many virtual friends, including one that sent me a Starbucks coffee a couple of weeks ago when I was sleep deprived. So yeah, beautiful in-person and virtual friendships to be made.
And Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, the same thing. I have so many friends that I connect with on social media, and I feel like sometimes it gets such a bad rap of like, being on Instagram, and I'm like, some of my closest friends are on Instagram and I talk to them every day. So I will never stop. But my Instagram, my handle is living the counter life. But I am on Facebook too. And I mean, you could text me, you could do all the things.
That's funny. I think I might follow you.
Seriously?
I know I recognize the handle.
But you guys might have known each other from the beauty counter world. So everyone listening knows
so
both
funny.
of these guests were in the beauty counter world. So Stephanie was a beauty counter consultant also. So you may have connected and not known it. So that's cool too. But I, for one, just appreciate both of you coming on, being willing to share. Hopefully the goal with every podcast I do is that just hopefully it helps somebody. So Stephanie, want to thank you for coming on, and Sarah for being a part of this.
Thank you for facilitating, Christy.
That's a wrap for this episode of Ripple Effect Connection. I enjoyed bringing these two wonderful souls together. Today, we've highlighted the incredible strength of special needs moms like Stephanie and Sarah. It's crucial that we recognize and amplify the voices of this often overlooked segment of our community. A small gesture of support can make a huge difference in their lives, reminding them that they are not alone on their journey. If you know a special needs parent or anyone who could benefit from hearing these powerful experiences, please share this episode with them. Feel free to connect with me anytime on social media and let me know what resonated with you. Reach out on Instagram @WholeHealthChristy. You can also get the full show notes for this and all episodes on my website, christyhugic.com/podcast. Be sure to check out my new website featuring all my updated coaching offerings. Next, spread the inspiration, like, follow, review, and share this podcast with others who will benefit from these stories. Stay tuned for the next episode of Ripple Effect Connection. Let's create waves of change together.